Three, two, one. You're live. Welcome to Weeding Aloud. And, if you can't tell, I've already been weeding without you. So today we are going back to the original format, and we're going to be going to a grady, goody, but oldie, but newy, but maybe new for some of you, but something that I can read and have read a million times. You can look at the binding on this hardback book. I bought this book when it first came out, brand new. This was The Dance with Dragons. I had already read all of the other books and was waiting on Dance. This was the first one that I had waited on. So, and that was, oh God, what is that now? Like 8 years ago? Shit, I got a text on live streaming. I'm just gonna ignore that. Sorry, guys. This is my bookmark. The Hand of the Kingpin. Huh? Put that on like it's Tywin Lannister or Tyrion. I'm gonna use it in my book though to hold the place. So, before we start reading, let's do a quick dab. I got something I wanted to review while I was at it. Summit Concentrates. God, my hands are always so greasy. Queen Mother Goji Indica. Queen Mother Goji Indica. That's a mouthful. Oh. Excuse me, guys. Got a cotton mouth like hell. Oh. I don't even need another dab before I start reading. Let me read like a couple of paragraphs and then we'll do a dab. The night was rank with the smell of man. The warg stopped beneath the tree and sniffed his gray-brown fur, dappled by shadow. A sigh of piney wind brought the man scent to him, other fainter smells that spoke of fox and hare, and seal and stag, even the wolf. Those were man smells too, the warg knew. The stink of old skins, dead and sour, near drowned beneath the stronger scent of smoke and blood and rot. Only man stripped the skin from other beasts and wore their hides and hairs. Wargs have no fear of man, as wolves do. Sorry. Hate and hunger coiled in his belly. He gave a low growl, calling to his one-eyed brother, to his small, sly sister. As they raced through the trees, his packmates followed hard on his heels. They had caught the scent as well. As he ran, he saw through their eyes and glimpsed himself ahead. The breath of the pack puffed warm and white. From long gray jaws, ice had frozen between their paws. Swords, a voice inside him whispered. Spears. The trees had grown icy teeth snarling down from the bare brown branches. One eye ripped through the undergrowth, spraying snow. His packmates followed, up the hill and down the slope beyond, until the woods opened before them, and the men were there. One was female. The fur-wrapped bundle she clutched was her pup. Leaving it for last, the voice said. Those he might have chosen, I ate his heart and drank his blood, and still he haunts me. One day, as they fled, wait, did I skip? Oh, I just skipped 2 pages. Sorry, guys. Whispered the males are the danger. They are roaring at each other as men did, but the warg could smell their terror. One had a wooden tooth as tall as he was. He flung it, but his hand was shaking and the tooth sailed high. The pack was on him. With one-eye's brother knocked the tooth thrower back into the snowdrift. He tore his throat out as he struggled. His sister slipped behind the other male and took him from the rear. Every time they say took him from the rear, we just absolutely have to stop right there. Mark that with my not the pup. Where was it? Took him from the rear. There we go. Got the sword marking the spot. Took him in the rear. This is such a common phrase in Game of Thrones that we literally have to stop right there and do a dab. It's so funny. I think this is like Martin's like veiled, joke. Because they talked about it with Stannis, they talked about it with the Blackwater Rush, and with Stannis taking the wildlings in the rear at Beyond the Wall. And I mean, it just comes up all the time, and they took him in the rear. They'll be talking about a battle from like years ago, and they'll be like, they took them in the rear. It's like a running battle joke. I mean, it's funny to me though. All right, let's get this party started. Let me clean this bad boy real quick. That's why I got that grease on my hands, because I'm doing that. Actually, you know what? I'll use the one with the cap this time. Let's be smart. Check this out. Oh my god. I'm not gonna lie. I got into it a little bit earlier today because, oh god, y'all don't even know. Struggle is real. So real. This is some super, super, super live ass resin. I mean, as soon as you open the lid on this thing, it's like, this is the loudest smelling stuff that I've smelled, oh god, in forever. Like I could, like, the dude opened it like 5 feet away from me, another one, and I was like, yeah, I want one of them. I don't even need to see it. I smelt it from 5 feet away. I was like, yeah. And it's sugary. Oh, watch this. If I can get this in there. Oh, gosh. So sugary. When it's like that, the terps are just like at their full potential. I'm gonna do like I don't know, not a killer dab, like medium to small dab. Still pretty, actually, this is a big dabber, so it's still pretty big. I've been, like, you can tell from my eyes, like, I've been doing them before I started, so took them in the rear. So if any of you want to add other books list that you'd like me to read chapters from, I love Martin King Kunitz, all of the greats, Lovecraft, Wells, Lewis. I've been on like Starship Troopers and, Robert A. Heinlein kick here lately. So anybody want to hear any of that, I would love to read that. Woosah. Like a boss. Yeah. That was from the cigarettes earlier, not from that. Yeah, like a phlegm thing. Makes for a raspier reading. So we left with she took him in the rear. That left the female and her pup for him. She had a tooth too, a little one made of bone. But she dropped when the warg's jaws closed around her leg. As she fell, she wrapped both arms around her noisy pup. Underneath her furs, the female was just skin and bones, but her duds were full of milk. The sweetest meat was on the pup. The wolf saved the choicest parts for his brother. All around the carcass's frozen snow turned pink and red, pack-filled bellies. They led leagues away in a one-room hut of mud and straw with a thatched roof and a smoke hole and a floor of hard-packed earth. Varamyr shivered and coughed and licked his lips. Sorry. Apparently I need to cut off all of my fucking alerts. Human meat. He had sunk so low after he could hear almost Hagen growling at him. Abomination! Many men eat the flesh of beasts, and beasts the flesh of men. But the man who eats the flesh of man is abomination. Abomination, that always been one of Hagen's favorite words. Abomination, abomination. To eat the human meat was an abomination. To mate as wolf with wolf was abomination. To seize the body of another man was the worst abomination of all. Hagen was weak and afraid of his own power. He died weeping alone, and I ripped his second life from him. Varamyr devoured his heart himself. He taught me much and more. But the last thing I learned from him was the taste of human flesh. Varamyr is the shit. He should have been king beyond the wall. That was a wolf, though. He had never eaten the meat of men with human teeth. He would not grudge his pack their feast. However, the wolves were famished, and he was gaunt and cold and hungry. And the prey, 2 men and a woman and a babe's in arms, fleeing from the defeat and death. They would have perished soon in any case, from exposure or starvation. This was a kinder, quicker, a mercy. A mercy, he said aloud, his throat so raw, but it felt good to hear a human voice, even his own. The air smelled of mold and damp, the ground cold and hard. His fire was giving off more smoke than heat. He moved close to the flames as he dared, coughing and shivering by turns. His side was throbbing where his wound had opened. Blood soaked his breeches and to the knees, dried in hard brown crust. Thistle had warned him that it might happen. I'd sewn it up the best I could, she'd said, but you need the rest and let it mend, or the flesh will tear open again. Thistle had been the last of his companions, a spearwife, tough as an old root, warty and windburnt and wrinkled. The others had deserted them along the way, one by one, fled behind or forged ahead, making for old villages in the milkwater, or even hard home or the lonely death in the woods. Varamyr did not know and could not care. I should have taken one of them when I had a chance. One of the twins, one of the big ones, that wore the scarred face, or the youth with the red hair. He had been afraid, though. One of the others might have realized what was happening. They would have turned on him and killed him. Hagen's word had haunted him, so the chance had passed. After the battle, there had been thousands of them struggling through the forest, hungry, frightened, fleeing the carnage that descended on them at the wall. This was Stannis that fell upon them. For those that don't know, in the show, when they saved Jon Snow and them from beyond the wall, that's what this is. Some had talked of returning to the homes that they'd abandoned, others of mounting a second assault upon the gate, which surely would have failed. But most were lost, with no notion of where to go or what to do. They had escaped the black cloaked crows and the knights in their gray steel, but more relentless enemies stalked them now. Every day left more corpses by the trails. Some died of hunger. Like anything else could, that was my go-to-bed alarm. Mance is fallen, the survivors told each other in despairing voices. Mance is taken, Mance is dead, Harma's dead, the Mance is captured. The rest of us run off and left, Thistle had claimed, and she was sewing his wound. Torment, the Weeper, Sixskins, all them brave raiders, where are they now? She does not know me, Varamyr realized then, and why would she? Without all of his beast, he did not look like a great man. I was Varamyr Sixskins, who broke bread with Mance Raider. He had named himself Varamyr when he was 10, a name fit for a lord, a name for songs, a name mighty and fearsome. Yet he had run from the crows like a frightened rabbit. The terrible Lord Varamyr had gone craven, but he could not bear that she should know that. He told him, the spearwife, that his name was Hagen. Afterward, he wondered why that name had came to his lips at all. Those he might have out of all those he might have chosen, I ate his heart and drank his blood, and still he haunts me. One day, as they fled, a rider came galloping through the woods on a gaunt white horse, shouting that they all should make for the Miltwater, that the Weeper was gathering warriors to cross the Bridge of Skulls and take the Shadow Tower. Good luck there. Many followed him, more did not. Later, a dour warrior with fur and amber went before the cook fire to cook fire, urging all survivors to head north and take refuge in the Valley of the Thins. Why he thought they would be safe there when the Thins themselves fled the place, Varamyr never learned, for the Thins were a hard people. It must be said. We must seek the sea, cried Mother Mole, and her followers, they all turned east. Varamyr might have been amongst them if he had not been but stronger. The sea was gray and cold and far away, though he knew what he never would live to see it. He was 9 times dead and dying, and this would be his true death. A squirrel-skin cloak, he remembered. He was knifed for a squirrel-skin cloak. Its owner had been dead, the back of her head smashed in, red pulp flecked with bits of bone, but her cloak looked warm and thick, and it was snowing, and Varamyr lost his own cloaks at the wall. His sleeping pelts and woolen small clothes, his sheepskin boots and his fur-lined gloves, his stores of meat, his hoarded food, his hanks of hair that he had taken from all the women that he had bedded in all of the towns. Even the golden arm ring that Mance himself had given him, all lost and left behind. I burned and I died, and then I ran, half mad with pain and terror. The memory still shamed him, but he had not been alone. Others had run as well. Hundreds, thousands. The battle was lost. The knights had come invincible in their steel, killing everyone who stayed to fight. It was run or die. Death was not so easily to outrun, however. So when Varamyr came upon the dead woman in the woods, he knelt to strip the cloak from her, and never saw the boy until he burst from hiding to drive the long bone knife into his side and rip the cloak out of his fingers. "Mother, it's my mother," Thistle told him later. It was his mother. If it were his mother's cloak, and when he saw you robbing her, she was dead, Varamyr said, wincing as her bone needle pierced his flesh. Someone smashed her head in some crow. No crow. It were Hornfoot men. I saw it. Her needle pulled the gash in his side closed. Savages, and who's left to tame them? No one. Mance is dead, or the free folk are doomed. The Thins, the Giants, the Hornfoots, the men, cave dwellers with their filed teeth, and the men with the western shore with their chariots and bone, all of them are doomed as well, even the crows. They might not know it yet, but those black-cloaked bastards will perish just like the rest. The enemy is coming. Hagen's rough voice echoed in his head. You will die a dozen deaths, boy, and everyone will hurt. But when your true death comes, you will live again. The second life is a simpler, sweeter, they say. Varamyr Sixskins would know the truth of that soon enough. He would taste his true death, and in the smoke that hung acrid in the air, feel it in the heat beneath his fingers when he slipped a hand under his clothes to touch his wound. The chill was on him too, deep down in his bones. Then time it would be the cold that would kill him. This time it would be the cold that killed him. His last death had been by fire. He had burned. At first he was in confusion. He thought some archer at the wall had pierced him with a flaming arrow. But the fire came from inside him, consuming him. And the pain, it was Melisandre. He doesn't know it, but we know it. Varamyr had died 9 times before. He had died once from a spear thrust, once from a bear's teeth in his throat, once in a wash of blood as he brought forth a stillborn cub. He died his first death when he was only 6, with his father's axe crushing through his skull. Even that had not been so agonizing as the fire in his guts, crackling along his wings, devouring him. When he tried to fly away from it in his terror, he fanned the flames and made them burn hotter. One moment he had been soaring above the wall, his eagle's eye marking the movements of the men below. Then the fires had turned his heart into a blackened cinder and sent his spirit screaming back into his own skin. For a while he had gone mad. Even the memory was enough to make him shudder. That was when he noticed that his fire had gone out. Only the gray and black tangle of charred wood remained, with few embers glowing in the ashes. There's still smoke. It just needs more wood. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Varamyr crept to the pile of broken branches. Catch! Burn! He blew upon the embers and said a wordless prayer to the nameless gods of wood and hill and field. The gods gave no answer. After a while, the smoke ceased to rise as well. Already the little hut was growing colder. Varamyr had no flint, no tinder, no dry kindling. He would never get the fire burning again, not by himself. Thistle! He called out, his voice hoarse, edged with pain. Thistle! Her chin was pointed and her nose was flat. She had a mole on one cheek, with her 4 dark hairs growing from it. An ugly face, to be sure, hard. Yet he would given much and more to glimpse it in the door of the hut. I should have taken her before she left. However, how long has it been since she had been gone? 2 days? 3? Varamyr was uncertain. It was dark inside the hut, and he had been adrift in and out of sleep, never quite sure if it was day or night. Wait, she said. I will be back with food. So like a fool, he waited, dreaming of Hagen and Bump and all the wrongs he had done his long life. But days and nights had passed, and Thistle had not returned. She will not be coming back, Varamyr wondered if he had given himself away. She could tell that he was thinking just from looking at him, that he had muttered in his fevered dreams, "Abomination," he heard Hagen saying. It's almost as if he were here in this very room. She is just some ugly spearwife, Varamyr told him. And I am a great man. I am Varamyr the Warg, the skin changer. It is not right that she should live and I should die. No one answered. There was no one there too. Thistle was gone. She had abandoned him, and all the same as all the same as all the rest. His mother had abandoned him as well. She cried for Bump, but she never cried for me. The morning after his father pulled him out of bed to deliver him to Hagen, she would not even look at him. He had shrieked and kicked and dragged into the woods until his father slapped him and told him, "Be quiet. You belong with your own kind," was all he said, and then he flung him down at Hagen's feet. He was not wrong, Varamyr thought, shivering. Hagen taught me much and more. Hagen taught me how to hunt and fish, how to butcher a carcass of bone fish, how to find my way through the woods. He taught me the way of the warg and the secrets of the skin changer, though my gift was stronger than his own. Years later, he had tried to find his parents to tell them that Lump had become the great Varamyr Sixskins. But both of them were dead and burned, gone into the trees and the streams, gone into the rocks and the earth. The day Bump died, Lump did not want to be caught of death. The boy had dreamed of the day when the bards would sing of his deeds and pretty girls would kiss him. When I am grown, I will be king beyond the wall, Lump had promised himself. He never had, but he had came close. Varamyr Sixskins was the name men feared. He rode on the back of a snow bear, 13 feet tall. He kept 3 wolves and a shadow cat in thrall, and sat at the right hand of Mance Raider. It was Mance who brought me to this place. I should have never listened. I should have slipped inside my bear and ripped him to pieces. Before Mance, Varamyr Sixskins had been a lord of sorts. He lived alone in a house in a hall of moss and mud, hewn logs. He had been Hagen's hall and attended by his beast. A dozen villagers did him homage. If bread and salt and cider, offering fruit from their orchards, vegetables from their gardens. His meat he got himself. Whenever he desired a woman, he sent his shadow cat to stalk her, and whenever the girl cast his eye upon would follow him meekly to his bed. Some came weeping eye, but still they came. Varamyr gave them his seed and took a hank of their hair to remember them by, and sent them back into their village from time to time. Some village hero would come with a spear in hand to slay the beastling and save a sister or a lover or a daughter. Those he killed, but never had he harmed the women. Some he even blessed with children's, runts, small, puny things, like Lump, and not one with the gift. Fear drove him to his feet, reeling, holding his side, staunch, steeping of blood, blood from his wound. Varamyr lurched to the door and swept aside the ragged skin that covered it. He faced a wall of white snow. No wonder it had grown so dark and smoky inside. The falling snow had buried the hut. Varamyr pushed at it. The snow crumbled and gave way, still soft and wet. Outside, the night was white as death. Pale, thin clouds danced in attendance on a silver moon. While thousands of stars watched coldly, he could see the shapes of other huts buried beneath drifts of snow, and beyond them pale shadows of weirwood armored in ice. To the south and the west, the hills were vast white wilderness, where nothing moved except the blowing snow. Thistle! Varamyr called out feebly, wondering how far could she have gone. Thistle! Woman, where are you? Far away, a wolf gave a howl. A shiver went through Varamyr. He knew that the howl, as well as Lump once had known his own mother's voice. One Eye. He was the oldest of the three, the biggest and the fiercest. Stalker was leaner, quieter, quicker, and younger, and Sly more cunning, but both went in fear of One Eye. The old wolf was fearless, relentless, savage. Varamyr had lost control of his other beast. In the agony of the eagle's death, the shadow cat had raced into the woods, whilst the snow bear turned his claws on those around her, ripping apart 4 men before falling to a spear. She would have slain Varamyr himself when he had come within distance. The bear hated him and raged each time he wore her skin and climbed upon her back. His wolves, though, my brothers, my pack. Many a cold night had he slept with his wolves, their shaggy bodies piled around him to keep him warm. When I die, they will feast upon my flesh and leave only bones to greet the thaw come spring. The thought was queerly comforting. His wolves had often foraged for him as they roamed. It seemed only fitting that he should feed them once in the end. He might well begin his second life tearing at the warm, dead flesh of his own corpse. Dogs were the easiest beasts to bond with. They lived so close to men that they were almost human. Slipping a dog's skin was like putting on an old boot, its leather softened by wear. A boot shaped by an accepted foot. A dog was accepted by a collar. Even a collar no human eye could see. Wolves were harder. A man might befriend a wolf, even break a wolf, but a man could not truly tame a wolf. Wolves and women wed for life, Hagen often said. You take one, that's a marriage. The wolf is part of you from that day on, and you are part of him. Both of you will change. Other beasts were best left alone, the hunter had declared. Cats were vain and cruel, always ready to turn on you. A elk, a deer were prey. If you wear their skins too long, even the bravest of men will become a coward. Bears, boars, badgers, weasels, Hagen did not hold with such. Some skins you would never want to wear, boy. You won't like what you would become. Birds were the worst, if you hear him tell it. Men were not meant to leave the earth. You spend too much time in the clouds, and you will never want to come back down again. I know 6 skin changers who've tried hawks, owls, ravens. Even in their own skins, they sit mooning, staring at the bloody blue. Not all skin changers felt the same, however. Once when Lump was 10, Hagen had told him of a gathering of such wargs, where most numerous in that company were the Wolf brothers, but the boy had found other stranger more fascinating. Bocaro looked so much like his boar that all he lacked was tusk, Orel had his eagle, and Briar the shadow cat. The moment he saw them, Lump wanted a shadow cat of his own. The goat woman, Grisella, none of them had been as strong as Varamyr Sixskins, though. Not even Hagen. Tall and grim, with his hands as hard as stone, the hunter died weeping after Varamyr took Grayskin from him, driving him out to claim the beast for his own. No second life for you, old man. Varamyr Threeskins, he called himself back then. Grayskin made four, and the old wolf was frail and almost toothless, as soon followed Hagen into death. Varamyr could take any beast he wanted. He could bend them to his will and make their flesh his own. Dog, wolf, bear, or badger. Thistle, he thought. Hagen would call it an abomination, the blackest of all sin. But Hagen was dead, devoured and burned. Mance would have cursed him as well, but Mance was slain or captured. No one will ever know. I know I will be Thistle, the spearwife, and Varamyr Sixskins will be dead. The gift would be perished with his body as he expected. He would lose his wolves and live out the rest of his life as some scrawny, warty old woman. But he would live, if she would come back, if I am still strong enough to take her. Waves of dizziness washed over Varamyr. He found himself upon his knees, his hands buried in the snowdrift. He scooped a fistful of snow and filled his mouth with it, rubbing it into his beard and cracked lips, sucking down the moisture. The water was so cold that he could barely bring himself to swallow. He realized once again how hot he was. The snowmelt only made him hungrier. It was food his belly craved, not water. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind was rising. Filled the air with crystals that slashed at his face and as he struggled through the drifts. The wound in his side opened and closed again. His breath made a ragged white cloud. When he reached the weirwood tree, he found a fallen branch just long enough to use as a crutch. Leaning heavily upon it, he staggered into the nearest hut. Perhaps the villagers had forgot a scrap of something when they fled, a sack of apples or some dried meat, anything that could keep him alive until Thistle returned. He was almost there when his crutch snapped beneath his weight, and his legs went out from under him. How long he sprawled there with his blood reddening the snow, Varamyr could not have said. The snow will bury me. It would be a peaceful death. They say you feel warm near the end, warm and sleepy. It would be good to feel warm again, though it made him sad to think that he would never see the green lands and the warm lands beyond the wall that Vance used to sing about. The world beyond the wall is not for your kind, Hagen used to say. The free folk fear skin changers, but they honor us well north of the wall. The kneelers hunt down. South of the wall, the kneelers hunt us down and butcher us like pigs. You warned me, Varamyr thought, but it was you who showed me the East Watch too. He could not have been more than 10. Hagen traded a dozen strings of amber and sled piled high with pelts for skins of wine and blocks of salt and copper kettle. Eastwatch was a better place to trade than Castle Black. That was where the ships came, laden with goods from fabled lands beyond the sea. The crows knew Hagen was a hunter and a friend to the Night's Watch, and welcomed the news that he brought of life beyond their wall. Some knew him for a skin changer too, but none spoke of that. It was there at Eastwatch by the sea that the boy had began the dream of the warm world of the South. Varamyr could feel the snowflakes melting on his brow. This is not so bad as burning. Let me sleep. Let me never wake. Let me begin my second life. His wolves were close. He could feel them. He would leave this feeble flesh behind and become one of them, hunting in the night and howling at the moon. The warg would become a true wolf. Which, though not sly, Hagen would have called it an abomination, but Varamyr had often slipped inside her skin as she was being mounted by One Eye. He did not want to spend his life as a bitch, though, not unless he had no other choice. Stalker might suit him better, the younger male. The One Eye was larger and fiercer, and it was One Eye who took Sly whenever she went into heat. They say you forget, Hagen had told him a few weeks before his own death. When a man's flesh dies, the spirit lives on inside the beast. But every day the memory fades, and the beast becomes a little less a warg, a little more a wolf, until nothing of the man is left behind, and only the beast remains. Varamyr knew the truth of that. When he claimed the eagle, he had been Orel's. He could feel the skin changer raging inside his presence. Orel had been slain by the turncloak Jon Snow, and his hate for his killer had been so strong that Varamyr found himself hating the beastling boy as well. He had known what Snow was the moment he saw that great white dire wolf stalking silent by his side. One skin changer can always sense another. Man should have let me take the dire wolf. There would have been a second life worthy of a king. He could have done it. He did not doubt. Now, do you think that little sentence right there might have some clout to it? There would be a second life worthy of a king. And at the last chapter of this book, Jon Snow is stabbed in the heart and wargs into Ghost, which would be a king in a kingly warg body. Just saying. Spoiler alert. Varamyr could see the werewood's red eyes staring down at him from the white trunk. The gods are weighing me, he shivered and went through. He had done bad things, terrible things. He had stolen, killed, raped. He had gorged on human flesh and lapped the blood of dying men as he gushed red hot from their torn throats. He stalked foes through the woods and fallen on them as they slept, clawed their entrails from their bellies and scattered them across the muddy earth. How sweet their meat had tasted. That was the beast, not me, he said in a hoarse whisper. That was the gift you gave me. The gods made no reply. His breath hung pale and misty in the air. He could feel ice forming in his beard. Varamyr Sixskins closed his eyes. He dreamt an old dream of a hovel by the sea, 3 dogs whimpering a woman's tears. Bump, she weeps for Bump, but she never weeps for me. Lump had been born a month before his proper time, and he was as sick and so often no one expected him to live. His mother waited until he was almost 4 to give him a proper name, and by then it was too late. The whole village had taken to calling him Lump, and is the name his sister Maya had given him when he was still in their mother's belly. Maya had given Bump his name as well, but Lump's little brother had been born at his proper time, big, red, and robust, suckling greedily at his mother's teats. She was going to name him after father, but Bump died, though. He died when he was 2, and I was 6, 3 days before his name day. Your little one is with the gods now, the woods witch told his mother as she slept. He'll never hurt again, never hunger, never cry. The gods have taken him down into the earth, into the trees. The gods are all around us, in the rocks, in the streams, in the birds, and in the beast. Your bump has gone to join them. He'll be the world and all that is in it. The old woman's word had gone through Lump like a knife. Bump sees. He's watching me. He knows. Lump could not hide from him, could not slip behind his mother's skirts and run off with the dogs to escape his father's fury. The dogs. Loptail. Sniff, the growler. They were good dogs. They were my friends. When his father found the dog sniffing around Bump's body, he had no way of knowing which had done it. So he took his axe to all three. His hand shook so badly that it took 2 blows to silence Sniff and 4 to put the growler down. The smell of blood hung heavy in the air, and the sounds the dying dogs had made were terrible. Yet Loptail still came when father called him. He was the oldest, and the dog was trained to overcome his terror. By the time Lump slipped inside his skin, it was too late. No, father, please, he tried to say, but the dogs cannot speak the tongues of men. So all that emerged was a pious whine. The axe crashed into the middle of his skull. And inside the hovel, the boy let out a scream. And that's how they knew. 2 days later, his father dragged him into the woods. He brought his axe, so Lump thought he meant to put him down, the same way he had done the dogs. Instead, he had given him to Hagen. Varamyr woke suddenly, violently, his whole body shaking. Get up! His voice screamed. Get up! We have to go. There's hundreds of them. The snow has covered him stiff and white as a blanket. He was so cold that when he tried to move, he found that his hands had frozen to the ground. Get up, she screamed again. They're coming. Thistle had returned to him. She had came by the shoulders. She was shaking him and shouting in his face. Varamyr could smell her breath, feel the warmth of it coming up the cheeks, his cold, numb. Now he thought, do it now or die. He summoned up all the strength left inside of him, and he leapt out of his own skin and forced himself inside of her. Thistle arched her back and screamed. Abomination was what he thought. What was she, Hagen? He never knew. This old flesh back in the snowdrift. As his fingers loosened, the spearwife twisted violently, shrieking. The shadow cat used to fight him wildly, and the snow bear had gone half mad for a time, snapping trees and rocks and empty air. But this was worse. Get out! Get out! He heard her screaming with his own mouth. Their bodies staggered and fell and rose. Her hands flailed, her kicked, her legs jerked with some grotesque dance as her spirit and his own fought for the flesh. She sucked down a mouthful of frigid air, and Varamyr had a heartbeat of glory in the taste of it and the strength of this young body before her teeth snapped her tongue and bit down with a gush of blood. She raised her hands to her face and tried to push them down again, but the hands would not obey. She clawed at his eyes. Abomination! Abomination! He remembered drowning in blood and pain and madness. When he tried to scream, she spat their tongue out. The white world turned and fell away. For a moment, it was as if he were inside the weirwood, gazing through the carved red eyes. A dying man twitched feebly on the ground, and a mad woman danced blind and bloody underneath the moon, weeping red tears and ripping at her clothes. Then they were both gone, and he was rising, melting. His spirit bore on some cold wind. He was the snow. He was the clouds. He was the sparrow, and the squirrel, and the oak, and the horned owl flew silently between the trees, hunting the hare. Varamyr was inside the owl, inside there, inside the trees, deep below the frozen ground, the earthworms that burrowed deep in the earth. He was them as well. I am the wood. I am everything that is in it. He thought exultingly. and hundreds of ravens took the air, calling as they felt him pass. A great elk trumpeted, unsettling by the children clinging to its back. Varamyr. A sleeping dire wolf raised its head and snarled up at the empty air. Before their hearts could beat again, he had passed on, searching for his own, for One Eye, for Sly, for Stalker, for his pack. His wolves would save him, he told himself. That was the last thought as a man. True death came suddenly. He felt a shock of cold, as if he had been plunged into the icy waters of a frozen lake. Then he found himself rushing over moonlit snows with his packmates close behind him. Half of the world was dark. One Eye, he knew. He bayed, and Sly and Stalker gave an echo. When they reached the crest, the wolves paused. Thistle, he remembered, and part of him grieved for what he had lost and another for what he had done. Below, the world had turned to ice. Fingers froze, crept slowly up the rarewood, reaching out for each other. The empty village was no longer empty. Blue-eyed shadows walked amongst the mounds of snow. Some were brown, some were black, some were naked, some were flesh gone, white as snow. A wind sighing through the hills, heavy with the sense of dead flesh. No, dry blood, skins that stank of mold, rot and urine. Sly gave a growl and bared her teeth, her her bristles. Not men, not prey, not these. These things below moved, but did not live. One by one they raised their heads toward the three wolves on the hill. The last look was the thing that had been Thistle. She wore wool, fur, and leather, and over that she wore a coat of hoarfrost, cracked when she moved and glistened in the moonlight. Pale pink icicles hung from her fingertips, 10 inches long, like knives frozen in blood. And in the pits where her eyes had been were pale blue eyes, flickering, lending her coarse features an eerie beauty they had never known in life. She sees me. That was the end of the prologue from Varamyr Sixskins of Dance with Dragons. This is Weeding Aloud, and I think we got enough time to do a quick dab before the show's over, and we're just under an hour. And if you've read through or listened through this chapter with me, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to dab along. I really do love George R. R. Martin and all of his stuff. I'll probably do some more of his like just straight short stories. I like Sand Kings and a lot of like the even some of the longer stuff like Tough Voyaging and stuff like that. Just some of my favorite chapters from that. There's like the Song of Crossing Dragon or whatever, and Song for Laya, Tower of Ashes. These are all great stories. Also, wouldn't mind doing some of the Stephen King shorts from some of his compendiums. It's hot. And I'm doing the dabs from the Summit Concentrates. Really good sugary wax. Oh man, that stuff. So flavorful. Straight live resin. Goodness. All right. Well, if you liked it, let me know in the comments and we'll be doing more. That stuff is amazing. So, yeah, this was Queen Mother Goji Indica. Tongue twister. That's what I call it. It's 62.79% THC, 0.17% CBD. So, look them up. Check them out. That stuff is amazing. Peace. Wait, is this thing still running? Oh, wait, I gotta stop. This one is still.